The government's Business and Trade Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, joins me now. Mr. Reynolds, thank you so much for your time this morning. I know you have got an important announcement to make on steel, but before we get onto that, just a few matters of foreign affairs. And first of all, the front page of the Sunday Telegraph today revealing that the architect of the Chagos deal, the former Prime Minister of Mauritius, Pravind Jugnauth, has been arrested on suspicion of money laundering. In light of that, don't we now have to put a pause on this deal?
Well, the negotiation with the Chagos Islands is about securing the long-term future of an incredibly important UK-US military base. That's what the deal is seeking to achieve. It's why the previous government began negotiations around it. And what matters to me is making sure for our national security that long-term position is upheld. And, there's been a lot of commentary on what that deal is. When it's finished, it'll be published in the usual way. But let's not lose sight of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to secure the long-term future of an essential facility.
But we're giving the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, so why are we also giving away a load of taxpayers' money on the back of it? There's been a rumoured spend of anything between £9 billion and £18 billion. If we're giving them the islands, one first of all questions why on earth we're giving them away, but why are we also paying them?
Well, look, I'm not close to that deal. That's the Foreign Office side of government, but I've been told that the figures in the press are not accurate, and there's a request that people wait to see when the actual deal is published as to what the details are. But it is about securing that long-term future of an important facility.
I know, but if we're going to secure our long-term future when it comes to our own defences, there's now a row brewing about whether we should be spending more on defence in general. We know that we're currently on 2.3% of GDP on defence spending. For that to go up to, say, 3%, it's going to cost £20 billion. We hear that giving away the Chagos Islands might cost a similar amount. Why not just cancel the deal with the Chagos Islands and plough that money into the Ministry of Defence? That would really protect British interests, wouldn't it?
Well, again, those figures, I would ask you not to just speculate on what that is, because I don't think you'll find that is not an accurate position. Well, that isn't always the same as something being correct, I'm afraid. What I would say is we do need to increase defence spending. The spending review will set that out.
Whether it would cost £18 billion, and he twice refused to deny that claim of that money. So the Prime Minister hasn't ruled out it costing £18 billion. That's why I'm using that figure.
Well, but crucially, what matters is not just how much you spend on defence, but the capabilities that you have, and the loss of an essential facility by not addressing a difficult issue, which is again why the previous government agreed with this as well at the time, would be a mistake. So I would just ask people to recognise this is about protecting a core UK-US asset and agreeing a deal that secures that long-term future and gets us to a position where we're not only spending the right amount of money on defence, but we've got the right capabilities and functions that come from that expenditure.
But if we give a load of taxpayers' money to Mauritius and we can't guarantee whether it will be used for scams or money laundering, isn't that going to be very irresponsible?
I think what would be irresponsible is not engaging with this issue and putting the future of a US-UK military base in question.
Can we move on to business, please, Mr. Reynolds? You've talked about some more money to support steel production, £2.5 billion, in fact. And it was good news, wasn't it, when Rachel Reeves announced the Heathrow expansion, Heathrow has made a commitment to using UK steel. Do you think we need the same commitment from Ed Miliband when it comes to the construction of wind farms in the UK? We must have to be using UK steel for that, because it would be self-defeating to import it from China, wouldn't it?
Yes, I want to see UK steel feature in UK infrastructure projects and in UK private sector projects. That's why a very welcome announcement, as you say, from Heathrow about its terminal, about the possibilities around runway expansion. The government's created the demand for that, the potential for that. Specifically on wind farms, we would need a different part of the steel supply chain, a plate mill, to deliver the kind of facility you're talking about. I do want to see that. This steel strategy is about delivering a part of that. You will broadly find where we make make a product in the UK, it does feature in UK supply chains for things made in the UK. The problem is we're not making enough, we're not meeting enough UK demand. Even with a lot of issues around Chinese overproduction, we only meet about 30% of UK demand from things made in the UK. In the EU, that figure is 80%. So there's a lot that needs to happen. You're exactly right to say demand is part of it, procurement's part of it, as is a whole range of things that's in that steel strategy that I'm publishing today.
Last week, Mr. Reynolds, I launched a new initiative on the show to speak to small and medium-sized business people about the impact on them of the budget. I'm going to speak to a couple of gentlemen who work in hospitality who are going to tell me a little bit later on in the show what a grave and adverse impact the increase to national insurance has been on their own businesses. In fact, one of the businessmen, I think, is going to tell me he's never had it so bad in the whole time that he's been running that business. We learned from the Times in the week that in the last quarter of 2024, the UK business closures reached a 20-year high. So you can't say the budget was pro-growth or pro-business, can you? We've got more businesses now going into foreclosure.
Well, look, there was a lot in the budget in terms of long-term investment and capping corporation tax that was about that pro-business environment. I gave a speech this week where I said I recognised what we have had to ask from business has been significant. We had to fix those public finances. There's no way I could be on your show and have the kind of black hole that we inherited. But we are clear that means we have to go further and faster on the things that generate growth. Specifically for the guests you'd have on, I'd point to the doubling of employment allowance and the threshold being lifted. So for smaller businesses, some of them will actually pay less in national insurance contributions. But I'm not tin-eared to the challenges a business like that may face if they employ a lot of people. We've got to get it right for them as well, and I recognise the duty is on us to deliver that.
I mean, the figures last week suggest that GDP per head actually fell. So are we in a GDP per head recession?
Well, look, the story of the last 14 years has not just been low growth, it's been the overall size of the economy growing not through GDP per head, but from the very large increase in immigration the Conservatives presided over. That is not good enough. We want people to be better off, we want them to be better off per head, and that is about our changes to planning, to skills, to trade policy, to public investment. We've got to get that right. But that is the test of whether people are better off. Have they got higher disposable income per head, rather than is the overall of the size of the economy simply bigger because more people are in the country? So that is the challenge we ourselves have set ourselves, and that is what we intend to deliver upon.
Keir Starmer is going to travel to Paris to join a meeting with Emmanuel Macron and other European leaders. Just reflecting on Trump's phone calls with Putin and indeed with Zelensky, and also J.D. Vance's quite explosive speech at Munich, what are the UK going to do? Are we going to be siding with the Americans or with Europe on this issue, particularly of defence spending?
Well, first of all, I think you're wrong to say there's a fundamental breach between the US and Europe. There are things the US has repeatedly asked for, which in the main, as you say, are a greater contribution from European colleagues towards the defence of Europe. I think that is reasonable. You know, they've been talking about that for a while. We've seen some increases in some European countries, but clearly there is more to do. Our role will be as a bridge between the US and Europe. There's a different view in the new administration towards ourselves, I believe, than it is towards the rest of Europe. So there's lots we can work together on, have to work together on. That relationship, that alliance will always be fundamentally important. But we play, I believe, our part on defence spending. We've got to go further. We've set ourselves on that. Some other European countries are going to have to recognise that. But that is a shared and mutual interest. And I think because of the US's concerns in the Pacific, they have a reasonable case for wanting to see a bit more from their European allies.
And yet we understand that Rachel Reeves is reluctant to put defence spending up by the amounts now demanded by the likes of David Lammy, who said yesterday that he thinks it should go back to Cold War levels, which would be 7%. So we've got conflict, have we, between the Prime Minister and the Chancellor on this issue? A story on the front page of the Sunday Times suggesting that Keir Starmer now has to override Rachel Reeves and put this defence spending up.
Look, I genuinely do not recognise that story whatsoever. I think the whole Cabinet recognises the scale of the challenge we face on European defence, wants to see that money go into it. Of course, a whole range of areas want more money from a Chancellor. That's the nature of the kind of country we have inherited when it comes to public services. But everyone recognises that. We also want to see the Strategic Defence Review make sure whatever we're spending it well, because frankly you've got to look at the capabilities you're getting from that. On my part, I work very closely with the Defence Secretary on the industrial base base that underpins that. I think there's more jobs, more things we could do. A greater share of the European industrial defence base could be in the United Kingdom. I visited an incredible company in Fareham, the Saab Radar Centre, just a few weeks ago. There's more that can be done on that, and I can tell you the Cabinet in the government, and I think most of the country, is united on that mission.
And finally, should Lord Hermer be considering his position as Attorney General? Now it's been revealed that as well as defending the likes of Jerry Adams, members of militia, foreign criminals who have been facing deportation, it's now been revealed that he represented a 9/11 terrorist and fought for him to be given compensation.
Camilla, you know how the barrister system works, the cab rank rule. You can't judge barristers by who they represent any more than, I don't know, you could judge journalists by who they interview. That is about fair legal representation. It doesn't mean they agree with their clients. No one has ever believed that, but a legal system requires legal representation, and the Attorney General's job, the job he is doing, his outstanding legal credentials are about what's right for the country and shouldn't be interpreted in terms of any kind of support for people he's had legal involvement with earlier on in his career.
But it could be something that could prompt people to question the Prime Minister's judgment in appointing somebody that has represented all of these people that appear to have been enemies of the state. That then puts a question mark over Keir Starmer's judgment.
I think people understand. People understand how the legal system works and will recognise that mischief and bad faith for what it is.